I think there's noise on the line from one of the mics. I think it's Mamaji's mic. Mute. Yeah, thank you. Ashokji, you want to read?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Am
Sure.
I audible? Am I audible? Yes.
Yes. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba. I can't see this anything on the screen, so I think.
Oh, sorry. 1 second. My bad.
Don't worry. Be happy.
Yes, sir. Baba, over to you, Ashok.
My wish. The lover has to keep the wish of the beloved. My wish for my lovers is as follows. Do not shirk your responsibilities. Attend faithfully to your worldly duties, but keep always at the back of your mind that all this is Baba's. When you feel happy, think Baba wants me to be happy. When you suffer, think Baba wants me to suffer. Be resigned to every situation and think honestly and sincerely. Baba has placed me in this situation. With the understanding that Baba is in everyone, try to help and serve others. I say with my divine authority to each and all that whosoever takes my name at the time of breathing his last comes to me. So do not forget to remember me in your last moments. Unless you start remembering me from now on, it will be difficult to remember me when your end approaches. You should start practicing from now on. Even if you take my name only once every day, you will not forget to remember me in your dying moments. Avtar Meher Baba ki jai.
Avtar Meher Baba ki jai. Thank you for reading my wish. So with that, let's get started on continuing our journey with Listen Humanity. We left off after finishing chapter 3, and we start with chapter 4, which is washing the feet of the poor. Before we go there, just a quick question. Yeah, anybody reread? Anybody has any doubts? We can discuss in a bit, but I think not everybody has joined the meeting. So again, punctuality issues. People come in a few minutes later. So if there's anything that uh, we need to discuss about in 3, we can take it up now, or we can get started reading and then see if there are things that come up down the line.
Karthik, while you're at it, also, sometimes we are unable to try to message if we are unable to join. So, I mean, that of course is a good protocol, but it happened to me last week. So that's my bad. I should communicate if I'm joining or not joining. So I take I take responsibility for that.
Okay, I think that's not really a protocol. It's just courtesy. It's I leave it to individuals. Those who are comfortable, please post. Those who are not, I mean, there's no expectation. Is all I'm saying. So we can
fair enough.
We can be we can just be informal. That's
but since you're doing Baba's work, and Baba is to be before time or on time, it's also there in Listen Humanity that they could hear the honk of his car coming. So I think we should. This is Baba's work. We should try to be every time on time. Is my
absolutely. I think Nomita knows the stress I've gone through to be on time today. I am very excited about it. Okay, so let's get started. It's chapter 4. So I'm assuming there's nothing specific that we have from a reread. What we remember very well from the last read is there are very few verbatim pieces that Baba is talking, which are discourses like that is messages on spirituality. A lot of it is contextual inputs, but wherever he brings in those spiritual elements, they're very deep. And obviously, we need to understand that in the context of DAGs, discourses, and God Speaks, there are mostly alignment between what he's saying in DAGs and other places and what we saw here, but there are also differences. The differences are not merely semantics; very mild differences were there, and we discussed some of that as well in the call. But I think we'll have to take it and internalize it in comparison to the larger picture, right? And keep going. But that's also the idea of what we're trying to do in this group. So feel free to stop and discuss something as we encounter those messages and interpretations as we go on, right? So with that having been said, I will get started with reading chapter 4. And the chapter 4 title is Washing the Feet of the Poor. Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai. Penta shivered in the chill morning as he served grapefruit, cereal, and eggs. Pandu scurried about in the background, cleaning up after the morning showers, a scarf thrown about his neck and shoulders. There was suppressed excitement among the household staff to get the two sahibs off in good time for the full day ahead. Baba was to wash the feet of 250 poor that morning, one for each member of the Sehwas. Then, moving pictures would be taken to show over television in the United States, demonstrating how God Speaks had been dictated on an alphabet board. Finally, in the afternoon, the ashes of an American devotee were to be burned in a brief ceremony here at Mehrabad on the hill, followed by an inspection of Baba's tomb and the other buildings. Pandu's wife, who ground the herbs and washed the pots in the kitchen, peeked at the two sahibs around the corner of the shrubbery, completely overcome with curiosity after having spent 4 days hidden in the kitchen. The sound of occasional shouts and laughter drifted up from the Sehwas buildings below. Already the Sehwasis had finished their breakfast and were awaiting their colorful ceremonies. At last, after what seemed endless, unnecessary dawdling to the edgy servants, the two men rose from the table. Penta had rushed all during breakfast to take the plates from under their noses just as soon as they had finished each dish. Then he had placed the next course with equal speed to try to convey the urgent sense that they must not risk being late. But even this early in the morning, the busy one with the quick cackling laugh had been telling a story, and the quiet one had been too interested to hurry the matter on. Penta wondered what these people found to talk about so endlessly. They stayed on and on at the table after meals. It was really difficult sometimes to know whether to take the last things off while they were still sitting there chattering away an hour after they had eaten. But they must be fine men, or Baba would not have invited them to come. So it was best to let them sit and perhaps take away the last things when they were so deep in talk that they would not know it anyway. A slight disturbance of clearing the table seemed to bring the two back to earth. They got up and went to the outhouse. Once more, the two seemed to forget the passage of time, and as Penta felt he could bear the strain no longer, the younger emerged from one door of the outhouse and called out to the other. In a moment, the busy one came out with his usual cheery call, and with a flourish of their hats and a goodbye, they were off through the gate and down the roadway. None too soon, the honk of Baba's car could already be heard approaching from Ahmednagar. He would certainly be there before those two slow ones had even reached the railroad tracks. But not so. As Baba drove up, the two dawdlers raced in from the opposite side of the drive and joined the group of bobbing, shifting heads, all anxious to catch a glimpse of the new man the night had wrought. With brief smiles and light touches of the hand here and there, Baba strode with rapid steps into the hall. At once, the Sahavasis slipped out of their sandals and shoes and squatted with a minimum of chatter to listen to the matter which was clearly on Baba's mind. Today, we will have a poor program. While I wash their feet and bow down to them, all of you should repeat continuously and audibly enough to be heard by yourselves any of God's names. Pick the one you're used to and keep up the repetitions as long as the program lasts. Do this so sincerely that I will hear it. God is deaf, and only the sincerity of the devotee makes him hear. So repeat the name of God from your hearts, and while repeating his name, think of God also. Now, let us return to the matter of washing the feet of the poor and my bowing down to them. When I bow down, it is neither for show nor as an expression of humility. I do it out of my love for humanity. Today, I bow down to these poor from Arangaon. They are very poor, but they have great love for me. When I first came here, most of these people were children. I have sent them word to obey me today and let me serve and worship them in my own way. When you see me washing their feet and wiping them dry, and when I put my forehead to their feet and give them 4 rupees each as prasad, I am actually the poorest of the poor. Prasad is the word that's highlighted. I think it's more for the Western audience, but let's just read it. A gift from a spiritual master, which is regarded as carrying a spiritual blessing. I continue here. It is of no use then to repeat my name. When you see me behave as an ordinary man, I am an ordinary man. When you find me angry, I am angry. When I express ignorance, I am ignorant. I am whatever I say I am. And I am also whatever you see and feel I am. There is no need for me to act or keep up appearances. When I come to this plane, I become everything in the entire material universe. Just as you see me as a man, so an ant simultaneously sees me as an ant. Just so, I am the poor of Arangaon too. Since I am actually the poorest of the poor, when you see me serving and worshipping the poor, that is why I tell you not to repeat my name at that time, but to take the name of God, which suits you the best. After the program is over, you may repeat my name. It is always best for you to repeat my name under all circumstances, except when you see me wash the feet of the poor and bow down to them. Again, reference. One not in Baba's presence at such a time has no reason to avoid repeating Baba's name. So this instruction clearly is for those who are actually watching this live, right? And again, the reasoning seems to be driven directly by Baba. Am I audible clearly?
Yes, yes, Karthik. Yes.
Okay, thank you. I just saw a pop-up here, a message here that said bad network quality. I'm just confirming. The instruction very clearly is in the first two lines of the paragraph here. Since I'm actually the poorest of the poor, when you see me serving and worshipping the poor, that is why I tell you not to repeat my name at that time, but to take the name of God, which suits you best. Right. So, yeah. Any thoughts or discussions before we continue?
Karthik, I want to refer to page 17 of. Uh, I'll read it out. Basically,
Sure.
it's about the prasad from the divine prasad from God to man. So I read, love is a gift from God to man, obedience is a gift from master to man, and surrender is a gift from man to master. So basically, talking about love, obedience, and surrender, which we discussed. But I thought this is the divine prasad or the divine gift from Meher Baba. Jai Baba.
Sure. I remember, I hope all of you remember from the earlier readings on how we discussed that line and how that line also is explained below. I mean, explained contextually after that reference in the para that Ashok is talking about. Okay, so if there's nothing else, can we continue? Any questions? No.
What's
Okay.
the meaning of poorest of the poor in this context? Anybody?
So I'm also not clear. Actually, I'm glad you brought it up, Sunil. You asked the questions which others hesitate. Thank you now and every time, right? So the more important question is if you go to the way he is explained in the first two lines which I reread. Since I am actually the poorest of the poor, when you see me serving and worshipping the poor, that is why I tell you not to repeat my name at that time, but to take the name of God which suits you best. Now, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm just saying that if you remember in the para above, he says that there is no need for me to act or keep up appearances. When I come to this plane, I become everything in the entire material universe. Just as you see me as a man, so an ant simultaneously sees me as an ant. Just so I am the poor of Arangaon too. So he is able to identify, not even identify, he's able to represent and manifest as each of the different forms of creation, just in an expression of solidarity and oneness with that form and with that type of soul or even individual soul itself. In the same way, it is the most perfect form of that level of soul. So in the same way, if you take the example of the poor, he is the most in gradation. He's the most poorest of the poor, as he is for every other type that is represented in creation, even just among the human form itself, is what I'm understanding. I maybe not.
Yeah,
Sanjay,
I think he is declassifying somebody being called a poor, because even in the economic context, when we say who is poor, so somebody who is having $32 less than one, whatever numbers are being defined. For example, in comparison to Sunil, I am poor. Then there are others who are poorer than me. Like there's a gradation. So it says it actually takes everything into picture actually, because everybody is poor in comparison to somebody else. In that sense, I see it that way actually. So everybody is covered. Jai Baba.
Very interesting, very interesting. But I think the larger point that
Yeah.
is, I think it's a gradation. And yeah, go ahead, sir, Sudhir.
I think poor and rich, two extremes. Rich are most attached, poor are least attached because they have nothing to get attached to. And he's the poorest because he's most detached. Maybe one of the explanation.
Yeah, yeah. It's a good one, Sunil. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when he says I am for the poor, so who is that poor? So it is kind of covering everybody in relation to being poor. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba. Actually, again, what he was doing in his physical form and what was visible to the people are obviously representations or manifestation of his universal work. And unless explained by him personally with great detail and emphasis, we will never understand what that was. And that part has been told by him multiple times, right? We will never understand completely what his universal work was and what the significance and actual connotation and purpose of each of the acts that we have been witness to in history when he was in his physical form. In that same way, obviously there's a significance to the work that he did with the poor, but I don't know. We don't know anything beyond. But he goes on to explain now. So let's hope we find out more as we go down the lines.
Karthik, if I may,
Yeah, sure.
I'm saying that, he said that whenever I come down as a man, I'm a man god, I take the attributes of the material world outwardly, and here he's washing the feet of the poor. Maybe he refers to that at this point, when I'm washing the feet of the poor, I am the poorest of the poor. And but I have a question. What is the significance of 250? Why was it 250? It's something which is, I mean, we can't.
Nobody will know, right? 4
Yes.
rupees. What is the significance? What is the significance of 250? So, and yeah, that's a good point. We
Lot
don't
of
know
unanswered
unless it's explained.
Yeah, absolutely. There are a lot of unanswered questions.
Yeah, and I think it's our logical mind, and we better rein in that logical mind that's only interested in these silly details and often at the cost of the bigger picture. So I think we will brush that away and continue to see and enjoy what is happening in the Savas as it is explained here.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I continue then. When you realize your own self, you will find that nothing such as the poor program has taken place. Nothing has ever happened or will happen. There is no such thing as time. The present moment is from the beginningless beginning. And everything that is at this moment. There is no past or future. God has always existed. He is. Truth is truth. It cannot be changed. In order to appreciate truth, approach it through itself without any game of hide and seek. Yesterday, when the families of the workers here at Mehrabad came before me to receive my darshan, I was worthy of giving darshan. Today, when you see me washing the feet of the poor, I will be the poor. It is not one and the same thing when sometimes I worship others and when sometimes I let others worship me. But if, when I am worshipped, I myself worship simultaneously, as sometimes I do, then in that case, both the act of worshipping and the fact of being worshipped amount to the same thing. I'll read that line again. He's referring to when he joins the act of worship, and it's a beautiful line. It is not one and the same thing when sometimes I worship others and when sometimes I let others worship me. But if, when I am worshipped, I myself worship simultaneously, as sometimes I do, then in that case, both the act of worshipping and the fact of being worshipped amount to the same thing. Among the villagers yesterday were those seeking my blessings for the fulfillment of their worldly desires. I have not come for that. I have come for a few elect, though I have to see to the whole world too. True worship is an expression of devotion, not just saying prayers and making supplications. For you to worship me truly, it is necessary for you to have my grace. What is grace? No bargaining whatsoever is possible in the receiving of grace, and there is absolutely no specific condition for its bestowal. It may be given freely to anyone, whether saint or sinner, intellectual or illiterate, man or woman. Grace is just grace, nothing more and nothing less. So let us see what is the footnote on condition, the specific condition for bestowal of grace. That is, there is absolutely no trait or achievement which guarantees the aspirant that he will receive grace. However, there is no end to the characteristics or impressions in the aspirant which restrict his ability to receive grace. I continue. Although it is next to impossible, yet it is conceivable that one might become 100% prepared by one's own efforts and thereupon realize God. In such an improbable event, God realization is not through grace. So, has there been an example of God realization without grace? Quiz question. Beams suggests that yes, there is one example, and that is Baba. So the only time the soul goes through the process and reaches God realization without the grace or even the existence of a master is when Baba got God realization for the first ever time, right? And then he became one with EAIC, and then we know what happens from there. EAIC is eternal avataric consciousness, infinite consciousness. So with that we continue. But if the worst sinner stood before me and I had the whim, laher, I could make him realize God in less than the flash of a second. That would be grace. At the very instant my grace descends upon you, you also become me, and we remain one. It is easier for me to come as an avatar than for you to receive my grace. The problem is that once you have been conditioned by duality, there is no end to the conditions which restrict your ability to receive my grace. Therefore, it is difficult for my grace to flow from me to you. That is why it is not as easy as it sounds for me to get the whim to cause you to receive my grace. As a matter of fact, it is flowing sufficiently all the time to fill one and all receptacles everywhere. There is rarely a vessel which is not filled with other things. A vessel must first be emptied before it can be filled by the flow of my grace. It is also my grace which helps a vessel to become completely emptied in the first place. So our prayers are to first empty this vessel and then draw in that grace. And for both, you need grace.
Yeah,
And
it
continue.
answers a lot of questions. Lot of
Yes,
questions are getting answered here actually. Why me? Why I don't get this? Why this? Why that? Everything is getting answered here actually. This
yes,
one last little read. Yeah, Jai Baba.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Why not somebody else? Why me is answered absolutely here. I continue. Just for the others' reference, we are on page 51. The sun is now shining brilliantly outside this hall, but the sunlight does not reach you here under the roof. The sun is doing its duty of giving light. You have also to do your duty in removing whatever comes between you and the sun. Unless you break open the roof, how can you ask the sun to pour its light upon you? You have raised this roof of ignorance over your own self. Demolish it, and you will find that you yourself are the light, and you yourself are the sun. Through my grace, a sudden crack in the roof can let the sunlight in on you immediately. But one in a million roofs might thus attract my grace. I am an ocean of grace, but I am also hard as flint when you try to draw that grace from me. The flow of my grace to you depends upon the intensity of your love, for it is love which attracts my grace to you. Generally, it is rightly said that the right time must arrive for grace to descend. Yet, in a particular sense, this is absurd. The contradiction arises because words are never enough to express spiritual truths accurately as they exist in the higher spheres, far above intellect and understanding. Suppose I happen to have the whim to make you realize God simply because you happen to be near me physically at that moment, and you do realize God. That is grace, and it is also the right moment for you. In short, as long as you do not receive grace, the right moment has not come for you. In short, as long as you do not receive grace, the right moment has not come for you. And when you do receive grace, the right moment has come for you. The greatest difficulty lies in the easiest matter. It is most difficult for you to become knowingly God because it is easiest for you to be what you have unknowingly been all the time, and what unknowingly you will always be until it is the right moment for grace to descend upon you. Impossible and possible are opposites in the realm of duality, but truth lies beyond all duality. If on a bright sunlit morning I tell you that it is night, you will be lying if you agree with me that this is so. But if you do not agree, that will mean I lied to you. Such an impossible situation would not exist if when I say it is night, you actually find that it is pitch dark in broad daylight. For this, you need grace. You can find more or less all of what I'm telling you in the books of various kinds, but all of those and all of this pale in comparison with the spiritual realities which lead to the one divine reality, God. The time is rapidly approaching when a tidal wave will rise in the ocean of grace. Then the usual process by which the water in the rivers flows into the ocean will be reversed, and the ocean water will rush through the riverbeds. Be prepared to receive this overflow of grace. Although the Sahvasis had sat with strained eagerness to take in every one of Baba's words, it was clear that many were floundering with the imponderables of his declamation on darkness in the light of day. Even for these people, though used to dealing with questions of devotion and implicit obedience to the Master, the rapidly shifting innuendos of Baba's brief discourse were almost too much to comprehend. Baba sensed this frustrated eagerness and, unwilling to stretch out the skein of tension beyond its present limit, switched abruptly to a different theme. Most of you know that as I promised at our last meeting at Mehrabad in September 1954, I gave up the use of my alphabet board on October 7 of that year. For over 12 months now, I have relied only upon ordinary gestures to express what I have to say. Sometimes, when it is absolutely necessary to express a particular word, I have one of you repeat the alphabet and stop you at the proper letters until the word is spelled. Now, however, I have promised Don to let him take a few moving pictures to show the American television audiences how I dictated God Speaks on the alphabet board. People there find it difficult to imagine such a work having been dictated on an alphabet board. That means I will have to take the board in hand and demonstrate. This morning, after the poor program, I will dictate on it before the cameras for a few moments. It occurs to me, however, that the Americans are very clever people, and some of them will be watching what I spell out on the board. I will write this on the board. I have given up the use of the alphabet board since October 1954, and I will not use it again. Although I can never forget that I am free forever of one and all bindings, I have had the habit for ages of giving promises and forgetting promises. Yet, not a single promise have I ever broken. You cannot quite fathom my words. That is what Hafiz means when he says, Chu Vishnavi Sukhan e Ehl e Dil Magu ke Khatast. Sukhan Shanas Na-i Dilbara Khatha Injast. Freely translated, this means, because you cannot grasp them yourself, do not tell lies about truths you hear from a master. Very powerful and poetically said. Because you cannot grasp them yourself, do not tell lies about truths you hear from a master. None of you should do things just because you see me doing them. Only do what I tell you to do. Never break a promise. First, think twice before you give a promise. But once you make it, keep that promise at any price. I am also thinking of making a special journey to give my sehvas to women and children who are eager for it in the north and the south of the country. I may even pay a flying visit to those in the Western world who are also eager to see me. The time is drawing nearer and nearer when I shall break my silence and manifest as I truly am. But don't take any of these things as a promise from me. I'm always free from all promises. Baba rose from his chair and went out from the room to the small white building devoted to his personal use. The Sahavasis scattered to the four corners of the property. Beyond Baba's small hut, there was an odd structure situated at the edge of the road, which rested on four low and entirely unengineered stilts. These, in turn, rested on a well-constructed slab concrete floor. From this rose vertical posts on which an equally well-constructed pitched tin roof rested. There were no walls. The effect was one of an open-air meeting house in the middle of which someone had carelessly left a large chicken coop. But India is a strange land, and strange things assume great value to its people. And so, after a while, the casual observer would think to inquire whether the larger structure might have been built to preserve the insignificant box beneath it. This was the exact purpose, for the crude box was one of the most sacred objects associated with Meher Baba. In this, he had spent some months writing a great tummy, which he always referred to thereafter as his Bible. In this work are said to be included many of the secrets of creation and man's relation to his creator. But no one has ever been allowed to read it, and so it remains a matter of speculation, while the cramped coop in which it was composed has become an object of veneration. On the edge of the concrete floor of this structure, a seat had been placed. Immediately in front of the seat and resting on the dirt was a small platform with steps on either side. This was to be the scene of washing the feet of the poor, already a large accumulation of tattered, unkempt men ranging in age from the late teens into the nondescript ranges of extreme age had gathered for the occasion. Some used crutches, some seemed quite blind, still others had no apparent defect of body or clothing. All seemed in a highly electrical state of anticipation, and several unwound and rewound their turbans in a last-minute effort at neatness. Some of the younger Sahavasis wandered out to take up their stands at various vantage points, carefully reading light meters and adjusting cameras. Several cowherd children from the town had wandered in to watch the proceedings, and hard on their heels came three dogs. Two were apparently inclined to tolerate one another, but the third had some distinctive feature which rendered him outcast. There was a constant rumble of growls in the background, which finally erupted into the snarls and yelps of a dog fight. This went on for several raging minutes until two of the younger men stopped the scandalous proceedings with a few lusty cuffs. Almost at the stroke of 9 o'clock, several of the Mandali came striding towards the shelter. With a few words and gestures, they organized the lot of villagers into a coherent, slightly curving line. At once, members of the Meherabad household staff, clad in spotless white shirts and pants, arrived with large buckets of clear water. The scene was now ready for Baba's entrance. A knot of Sahavasis, which had collected at the corner of Baba's white hut, began to billow and threatened to break loose from its anchor post. Finally, with a great swirl, it swept into the dirt lane leading to the concrete floored shelter, and from its heart, and from its heart strode Baba in his favorite pink coat. With cameras grinding and clicking along the group made its way to the simple platform, and Baba sat down in the chair behind it. He drew his sheer white pants up to his knees, a heavy robe was placed over his legs, and off came the pink coat in preparation for the work. The first old man in the line was led carefully up the stairs by one of the Mandali, while another Sahawasi supported him from in front of the platform. Baba poured the contents of a large tin cup over the ancient one's dusty black feet. The water reached a thin layer of brown off from the arches and toes and rolled down into a shallow puddle on the metal surface of the platform. The excess water was immediately scraped away from Baba and onto the ground by another of the Mandali. Baba reached for a towel held in readiness for him, carefully wiped the thin, twisted feet, and solemnly touched his forehead to them. During this time, the old man seemed about to collapse on the platform, perhaps out of extremity of age or excitement, perhaps from distress that this great one should be bowing to him rather than he falling flat on his face. Several times it seemed he must surely collapse, but always the Sahabasi standing in front of the platform saved him by bracing him under the armpits. Baba reached to the side with his right hand, and 4 1 rupee notes were placed in it. These he handed to the old man, who was then led down in a state of great agitation from the platform. As he reached the ground, a second aged individual was brought forward. Again, the large tin cup sloshed water over long, thin black feet. Again, the excess water was scraped away and the feet dried. Baba's forehead touched the feet. 4 rupees were placed in the old man's hands, and he too was led off. The third person was a relatively young boy dressed in white. He needed no help and held himself tall and proud as Baba repeated the routine. The thinness of his black legs was mirrored in the black gloss of the puddle of water at his feet, and then the image was destroyed by the deft motions that scraped the excess away. 4, 5, 10, 20, 100 souls were led up to the platform and then gently sent on their way. Some were so old and bent and diseased that they had to be lifted up the steps, held carefully, and then lifted down. Large sores stood out on the calves or arms of some. Others were so emaciated that there seemed little flesh left to clothe the skeleton. At one point, Baba stopped his routine and, pointing to the tall, rugged man who had just mounted the platform before him, began to gesture. This is Satya Mang. Once he was well known as a daring dacoit bandit who terrorized this part of the country. He's now going straight, but is practically starving. He was attracted to me more than 30 years ago and soon became devoted enough to promise to give up robbery. That promise caused him a great struggle. After some time, he could not help slipping back, and one night he set out to steal again. He succeeded with his plans, but just as he was about to take his plunder, he saw me standing there before him. This reminded him of his promise, and because of his love for me, he was saved. While Baba was gesturing and Eroch translating, Satya Mang shifted his weight first onto one foot, then to the other, unmindful of the attention being paid to him. As the telling came to an end, it seemed as if Baba stroked the feet even more gently with the towel and bent his forehead to the gaunt feet even more tenderly. The craggy, graying man took the 4 rupees with a look of embarrassed devotion and walked stiffly down the steps and through the crowd. As the morning sun rose higher, its rays began to shine directly on Baba, the shade of the nearby tree which had originally protected him having slowly retreated. Soon, Baba began to show signs of discomfort. He frowned from time to time as he waited momentarily for the next pair of dusty feet to leave. At first, the photographers, always sensitive to the possibility that they were fracturing the piece, concluded that they were the cause of Baba's apparent displeasure. As if by prearranged signal, they stopped the grinding and clicking and drew off to a respectable distance. Their consciences had been guilty anyway, as it was a matter of recent history for Baba to allow relative freedom in the taking of pictures. The discreet withdrawal of the photographers had no effect on the increasing frown which Baba wore. Finally, he turned to the ready Eruch with an urgent message. Eruch hastily passed the information on to key workers, and with faultless timing, the proceedings were halted and transferred to the great tent at the side of the meeting hall. As Baba walked the scant half block to the new scene of activity, he held his sopping wet pants high above his knees. Looking for all the world like a Chinese laundryman became somewhat too intimately involved in his wash. There was a look of almost shyness on his features as he walked through the milling crowd of admiring followers, caught in almost too mundane a situation, even for one who stretched from heaven to earth. The final score of paired feet, of dusty feet, of tired feet, of gnarled feet, of thin feet, of festered feet, of smooth young feet were washed up with dispatch. At the, at the last, there were almost no bystanders, only the fleet emotions of the tin cup as it sloshed, the swiping aside of excess water, the helping of tired eyes and unsure legs in their descent from the low platform. Baba and the Mandri worked steadily on until the washing the feet of the poor and the bowing down was done. Is Don ready now for the television film? Where does he want it to be photographed? How long will this take? Baba had no sooner finished the first task than he was impatient to be on with the next. Everyone asked questions, everyone volunteered answers, almost everyone gave orders. The confusion was uproarious, and the good humor and excitement unsurpassed. The idea of participating in a film to be shown to American television audiences could not quite compete with listening to Baba, but it had a zest for the unusual about it, and the Sahavasis were enjoying the situation to the hilt. The great dilemma was how to satisfy the needs of the camera for sunlight and Baba's need for shade. Decisions were made and unmade in rapid succession by everyone, but the bewildered cameraman, who clearly was unprepared to cope with the exuberance of 250 men who had spent 3 days in the presence of their master. 2 trials were lost in a babel of confusion and misunderstanding. But the 3rd trial went off without a hitch. For good luck, there was a 4th and a 5th, all from slightly different angles. Then Baba held up his hand to signal that the filming was at an end. His hands gestured quickly, and a smile of mixed amusement and embarrassment broke out on Erich's features as he said not too loudly, Baba says that the next time Don says something will take 10 minutes. Baba will know he means 30 minutes. It was 2:30 in the afternoon of the same great day on which the feet of the poor had been washed and the television film made. The lively one and the quiet one were up on their beds having their usual after-lunch nap. The energetic snores of the former could be heard wafting through the open windows, sandwiching themselves in between the low drones and soft clanks and thuds indigenous to the country on a quiet afternoon. Down at the bottom of the hill and across the railroad tracks, where the Sahwas buildings were located, a low mutter of activity began to break forth. It grew in intensity, and suddenly the clear, brief honks of the blue Chevrolet could be heard approaching the hill. The busy one sprang from his bed with a full-blown snore still hanging in the air and shook the quiet one. On your feet, Baba's coming, and out the door and down the steps he raced. In a moment he was back. Forgot my hat. Come along. Now mustn't be late. And out the door he clattered again. Already the car was coming in the gate, and Penta and Pandu and Savak were flying about the yard bent on purposes known only to God. Eruch addressed himself to the two sleepy-eyed ones. Baba wants you to witness the placing of Mildred Kyle's ashes. Don, you have met Mildred Kyle, and when you go back to America, you must tell them that you have seen Baba place her ashes near his tomb. A marble marker will be made later to put over them. Baba has not allowed any of the Sehwasis to come up the hill until the ashes have been placed. But after they will come, and he will show them the grounds and the buildings here and through his tomb. Without words, the small group went out of the yard to the edge of the hill where a squarish, domed white building and an assortment of graves were located. The white building was Baba's tomb, now ready for some years. Although it were buried, a collection of well-loved and faithful old followers, as well as several dogs who had burrowed deeply into the lives of all. At the edge of the modest little row of graves, a small stone crypt had been prepared in the ground. One of the mandali lifted a large stone from the opening, and Baba slowly lowered a small cloth pouch into it. Baba stood thoughtfully under the umbrella and looked long at the modest remains of a great and saintly woman. What was he thinking? What was he feeling? Was she perhaps happier at that moment than she had ever been while she lived and breathed in that fragile puff of ashes? What had her life really been behind that unassuming exterior? How often had she wished she might break through the impenetrable wall of the otherness of human beings to find the real self and the simple warmth of oneself, another? Had she perhaps accomplished it? Was she perhaps even now buried more securely in the heart of the one who watched so pensively than those ashes would ever be in the security of stone and earth that surrounded them? Baba twitched a hand, then straightened up soundlessly, and the rock slab was placed over the small opening. Mildred Kyle's body had come to rest. The first of the main bodies, the first of the main body of Sahwasis were entering the front gate of the compound. In a few moments, all but a few stragglers were inside. Baba and a small group returned to the compound, and he began to lead the Sahwasis around the central building. This was of wood and compound, and he began to leave the Sahavasis around the central building. This was of wood and plaster, built high off the ground atop a massive sloped stone foundation about 8 feet high. Baba explained that the stone foundation had originally been a water reservoir for a British troop encampment. The troops had subsequently been moved, and so the reservoir had fallen into disuse. In about 1922, the property had been acquired for Baba's work, and the Mandali had entrusted the present two-person dormitory atop the old reservoir in 1938. The bottom had earlier been pierced by two doors, one leading into what was now a storeroom and the other into a simple bedroom. The group then walked to the rear of the structure where a tin-roofed, open-sided lean-to was attached to the old reservoir. Here, a dirt floor had been constructed of a mixture of water, cow dung, and clay, beat firmly into place and kept slightly moist. The result was a very serviceable, odorless floor. The cow dung, rather than presenting a sanitation problem, was said to have germicidal properties. In this open lean-to, were a dining table, a highboy, and chairs. Here, the lively one and the quiet one were served their meals of specialty, of specially Europeanized food. Baba's younger brother Adi and his wife Freni spent their days here supervising the guest household, eating their meals with the two Occidentals and making certain that their least wishes were anticipated. At night, the husband and wife returned to their home in nearby Ahmednagar. As the throng of curious Sahavasis crowded into the sheltered area, Eruch asked them to sit down, while Baba sat back in a jackknife canvas lawn chair. He was about to start his gestures when he caught himself in midair and stared curiously at the hard-packed earth floor. Concern was immediately apparent on his face. For several moments, he kept on a running stream of questions and answers with Eruch, Adi, and Savak, his concern being that someone would catch cold sitting on the damp ground. Then Eruch motioned for everyone to stand up, and the party transferred in toto upon the stairs and into one of the two dormitory rooms atop the old reservoir. Cool afternoon breeze was blowing through the many windows, and which the shutters had been flung back, and the flagstone floor was cool to the touch of hand and the haunch. Here Baba was satisfied, and all faced him attentively to hear what he had to say. The 5 greatest thieves in the world, he began, are the 5 living perfect masters of their time. They often steal the hearts of people, and periodically they also steal me and bring me down amongst you. Again and again, I must become what I am and catch time, and each time this is due to the 5 perfect masters. Wherever I may be, at whatever time, I will always be due to those 5. I never come of my own wish. It is always the 5 perfect masters who bring me down in each avataric period. Those 5 hold the key to all of creation, which contains a number of universes. I have explained in detail in God Speaks how God, man as the avatar, Buddha, Christ, Soul, and men become God as perfect masters, Sadgurus or Kutubs. Let's see the footnotes to God Speaks and the terms. He's just making a page reference. It's 143 to 145 on God Speaks. The second one is also a page reference, 130 to 131. And secondly 172 to 173. I continue. It is because of the 5 perfect masters that I appear here before you. They fetch me down, and I experience myself as everything and tell you that I am everything. This statement, although startling, now he's talking about I am everything. This statement, although startling, rests upon or falls through a very brief line of reasoning. God is everything. Therefore, one who is God, either through descent as the God-man, avatar, or as a man-God, perfect master, must experience himself as everything in God. The burden of proof would then shift to whether Meher Baba were one with God rather than whether he found himself to be everything. I continue. The state of God realization cannot be described. It can only be known to those who achieve that supreme experience of the conscious state of God. It is beyond the domain of mind, which persists only through the 6th plane of spiritual consciousness. At that stage, God is seen through the mind as being everywhere all the time. But that is not the supreme experience, as the seer and seen still remain two. The 5 perfect masters are the 5 persons of their age who do not only become God, but after achieving God realization, also come down to the ordinary, normal consciousness of man. Thus, they process simultaneously God consciousness plus mental, subtle, and gross consciousness. The world is never without the 5 men God. In spite of appearing as 5 different men, they are and always remain one God, as each one has exactly the same supreme experience of God consciousness. Nevertheless, in external relations with the world, each shows a different personality with his own characteristic traits, tastes, nature, habits, and ways of dealing with the people. For example, both Sai Baba and Baba Jan were very fond of Baba Jan was very fond of. Okay, let's go down to the footnote. Baba Jan died in Pune, September 29, 1931, at the reputed age of 133. It was she, one of the greatest Sufi saints, who gave Meher Baba God realization when he was 20. Okay, I pause here. Is there any questions or discussions?
Question is a difficult one. What is the message Baba conveys by bowing down to the poor? Am I heard?
What is your question again, Mamaji?
What is the message that Baba is trying to convey by bowing down his head to so many poor?
So many poor?
So many poor people
So
he has bowed down.
the 250 people where he bowed down, the question
Oh, I
is,
see, I see.
what is the message? So I think there are two, I mean, a quick reaction. Again, there's more to it. As I already said, that we will never understand as mere individualized souls the full purpose of what is being carried out. Not full purpose, full meaning of what's being carried out. For the public expression, obviously, it could mean that it leads to emancipation of the poor, emancipation of the weak. It leads to empowerment, and maybe that's the symbolic gesture that Baba has done for all of mankind, that these are also souls that are equally important, if not as respectable as us. But at a spiritual level, obviously, as part of his universal work, there could be much greater significance. And quite honestly, I do not know what that is. But I'm keen to hear what the others are saying as well.
Yeah, well, I agree with Karthik, but poor is relative, right? But in one lifetime they may be poor, in another lifetime they may be very rich, stinky rich. It does not. There's nothing to do with any of the spiritual knowledge or anything. By bowing down to poor, maybe one aspect is to raise economically the whole world. That's one thing. Poor in 1930s or 40s is different from poor now. That may be one of the cause. The other cause is maybe mainly lifting their spiritual level to a higher level. That's what I'm thinking. I mean, it's the same answer like what Karthik said. Jai Baba.
Ashok, you were saying something?
Yeah, Karthik, I'm saying that, in this world of duality, rich or poor, good or bad, all are one. And Baba has taken some special, he's bestowing a special blessing, even those who are very poor or who are, frail, as I mentioned in this. So for him, all are one, is one thought which comes to my mind.
Apart from being poor or rich, Baba is bowing down to so many drop souls. And what is that he is trying to convey to us?
What are your thoughts, Mohan?
I'm not so sure. So he's one thing is he's say the avatar is bowing down to another soul. So that is he's showing that he is the same with the other soul. God is everywhere. God is the single entity. It is the existence that is being conveyed to all the people who are participating there, and we as we read through or see the video, it is so very touching, because we keep the idol at a great pedestal and we bow down to the deity. But here the deity is bowing down to us. That is something which we need to understand for a lifetime, I think. Jai Baba.
Yeah, I think lifetimes, or an instant. We do not know. May each one of us get what we truly deserve with the element of grace that we get from Baba. Any other points? Any other reactions? Any other interpretations of the gesture of washing the feet of the poor? Again, I think I've said this before. This personally was one of the most touching and first brushes with the experience of a Baba moment in my life. So when I saw this video in the Mehrabad MPC media room, which by the way is behind the Welcome Center, that was unwittingly and ununderstandably my first Baba moment, because I experienced his presence when I saw those videos. Like Mamaji said, these are very moving videos, and that was my first. I did not understand what was happening to me, but I was very, very moved, and I was in tears And that was the first ever time I saw the video of Baba. Until then, I had not seen the video of Baba, and this was in my first visit. So, yeah, it operates at multiple levels. We do not know what the full meaning is.
I have seen Baba washing lepers' feet, but have not seen
Yes.
Baba washing poor people's feet. Are you talking about lepers or poor people?
I'm not sure, but then I think there were lepers as well and normal people as well. I surely remember lepers being in the queue, but
I see.
I could relate to all the things that are being said in the last few pages in the video I saw. The pedestal is the same pedestal that's in the museum on the hill. The scene is described vividly as I saw it in the video. So maybe it's
Yeah.
a combination of lepers and poor. I do not know.
Yeah,
Lepers
lepers.
were there in that line.
What I read or heard from my elders was the reason why Baba washed the lepers' feet was to control the diseases in the future that might come, just like pandemic. That was the purpose of controlling the diseases in the future. That was the reason why Baba was washing lepers' feet. That is what I understood as a young boy. I had an interesting experience. We used to live in Tenali, by city by name Tenali. My father was a principal, and in the neighboring city Guntur, there was a big Baba center. We used to regularly go there, and there used to be one man by name Ramanaya, and I'm talking about 60, 64, 65. And he used to regularly go to Mehrabad, and he used to meet Baba and met with Baba. He even gave one of the rose cloth, pink cloth for the coat, for Baba's coat, you know. So one time, because Baba was doing this washing the feet, so he called some lepers in Guntur to wash their feet. And he got a telegram from Mehrabad, from Adi Karani. Meher Baba says, don't do what I do, not to do any washing for lepers' feet. That was something like that in the telegram. So he called up, and the telegram came just when he was about to wash the feet of the lepers. The telegram came, and then he called off that washing. I remember that incident very well. That's when I heard about this controlling of diseases by avataric action. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
Very interesting. So it could have been far worse, is what you're saying about coronavirus.
Oh yeah,
far worse.
I strongly feel in India, if you look at some of the Bombay and
It's
some
grace,
of these places, how many people live in a small, huts, So many people live in a very close proximity. And in a normal way, there's no way Corona will go away when the people are like that. It will spread like wildfire. If it is still control, I strongly feel it is of some perfect masters waving the wand on controlling the pandemic disease, COVID.
Yes, indeed.
Rabi, as you have given this example of, but all this conjecture is from the humanity. Baba, has he ever indicated what is the idea behind going down? Is there any literature available where he has given any explanation? Because all other things are the drops holes trying to theorize on what has happened.
Yeah,
but is there a literature?
Lord Meher, I think, has got a lot of these instances where it was explained. I'm not sure where exactly it is, but I don't know. To be honest with you, I don't remember where you can find this. I'm sure you will find it.
Okay. Okay.
Jai Baba. Okay, I want to just add that generally in the Brahma fraternity, it is said, "Do not touch
Jai Baba.
others' feet."
So
Just 1 minute. So, can you all hear me? Okay. So
Yeah, we can hear
basically,
you.
when Baba is
Go ahead.
going down to
Let Ashok finish what he's saying. Ashok, sorry, Kama can come in after that.
yeah. So when you are bowing down to the another person's feet, his impressions or sanskaras are taken over by the person who bows down, and this could be one of the reasons that Baba is taking over the pain, the suffering, or the impressions of the people whom he bowed down to. And and also, bowing down could be that loving the innermost loving soul or the innermost loving self. Yet it remains an area of research of going from this incident to what exactly it means. As Karthik also has said, it is beyond our beyond our understanding and imagination. What exactly is that process? Jai Baba.
Yeah, Kama, over to you. Kama?
Kama Koti, come on. Or somebody else.
Kama probably could
Right.
not hear Ashok talking.
Yeah, and for whatever reason, I'm sure he wanted to say something. So, Kama, last try. Go for it. No.
He's
So
coming on.
Okay. So we'll then continue till
Anyone else have any
Anyone
comments or ideas?
Which year was Baba's 76th birthday?
76th birthday should have been 1967.
Yeah,
Yes.
during that time. Yeah, I remember during that time it happened.
In Tenali.
Guntur, in Guntur.
Sorry, Tenali is your place and Guntur is where the
Tenali,
happened,
we used to
correct.
live there, and yeah.
Yeah. All right, so I'll continue, and Kama, you can jump in when your mic is better, probably towards the end of the call where we'll quickly discuss and finalize. We're almost there. I continue. For example, both Sai Baba and Baba Jan were very fond of hearing Qawwalis, Sufi songs, and Upasani Maharaj had no taste for them, although he was equally capable of appreciating devotional music. Again, Sai Baba died October 1918, revered in the Deccan as one of the greatest saints of his age and the spiritual teacher of Upasani Maharaj. Baba Jan died in Pune September 29, 1931 at the reputed age of 133. It was she, one of the greatest Sufi saints, who gave Meher Baba God realization when he was 20. So I think with that we'll also see the footnote about Upasani Maharaj before we continue. Upasani Maharaj, born May 15, 1870, died December 24, 1941. A renowned Hindu saint who brought Meher Baba back to gross consciousness after Baba Jan had given him God consciousness. For more details, see Appendix 2, which we happen to read as well. So I think I'm just reminded on a casual note on a very beautiful Qawwali concert that I attended live in Bangalore last Sunday, and I think I shared it on the Baba group as well to see if others could enjoy this. I was myself not sure what I was getting into, though I'm in very active in the music scene. But it was full of Baba's love, and I could not help but be reminded of Baba so many times in that concert. It was a concert by a group called the Varsi Brothers, and there were about I think 4 or 5 brothers and about 10 people on stage, and it was a beautiful experience of what we learn from Baba. So there were songs that were Kabir's dohas. Dohas are the couplets, and then you had Amir Khusro, and then some more from Meera. And I think it's difficult to even imagine that what we normally think of Muslim people and how they talk about Ram, how they talk about Krishna, and how he brought together the confluence was just like experiencing what Baba's message of being beads on a string was all about, right? And especially when you talk about the religious things, and also at the point where we are in our culture and our country, the fault lines are so clearly drawn that I could not help rejoice that there are pockets of hope, right? There are pockets of hope and pockets of inspiration where Baba is working through them. And I was repeatedly reminded of somehow getting Baba's word and message probably to the Varsi brothers. So I'm putting it out here as well. So if there is some way of getting Baba introduced to them, we should. And if they are so well carrying on this beacon of the Sufi message with so much musical quality, obviously they should hear of and know more about the avatar and about Meher Baba. So sorry for that distraction, but I was very moved and I thought I should share it with this group. So that is, with that, I think we are almost out of time. So Kama, are you ready to say what you're saying? Don't hold back.
Yeah, Jai Baba, can you hear me?
Yes,
Hello?
yes, we can. Baba
Okay,
stopped you the other time, but he's letting you talk now.
Yeah, Baba is not allowing me. Sometimes the network, I can hear you guys. In fact, the last, when I was supposed to speak after Ashok, I could hear all of you, but I was not able to. The mic was on. So anyway, I had to rejoin you
So
guys.
he had to cool you down. He had to calm you down. I'm
probably,
kidding.
yes. Actually, the explanation I wanted to give about the bowing of Baba and what is the significance. Of course, the most important point we all know is whatever Baba does, this is doing inner work, and we can't use our limited mind to understand what kind of work is doing. But what I can say is that by bowing to the poor, to the impoverished, to people who are suffering from leprosy, we have seen that there's been a great improvement, or say almost, less than, in single digits, leprosy has come down a lot. We are also seeing the fight here between the haves and have-nots, where everybody would like to have, nobody should suffer from roti kapra makan, the basic Maslow's food, shelter, and clothing. That struggle that is still going on, even though this current world where we are in the 21st century is actually, it can provide, it has the resources to provide the basic necessities for everybody, for the 7 to 8 billion people. Another explanation I can say is that, for example, the greetings that we do in the Eastern Oriental way, when we do Namaste or Namaskar, or when the Japanese bow to each other. So the significance is myself is bowing to yourself, which is the same in each one of us. It is not the ego personality self. In the West, you shake hands and then you really give a very hard handshake. And that is like an ego, Yes, it is a Western form of greeting, I can understand. But it is, I find it more, it's a kind of a coarse kind of thing. But when you look at it from a finer point of view, the Eastern way of the Japanese way of bowing to each other, even when they are doing martial arts, when they are playing martial arts, or even when we meet each other in the temple, or we do namaste. So for me, that significance of doing namaste is very clear, that we are reminding ourselves that I am not the ego personality self. I'm just playing this role, but actually I'm the realized self, which I want to awaken every waking moment. So from a top-down approach, trying to understand, putting Baba on a pedestal, okay, great. He's our spiritual mentor. He's our universal father, mother, everything. We all know that. But in a technical sense, when we have read God Speaks, it's very clear that Avatar is what the first drop soul who became God realized. And he became designated as the Avatar, Chairman Emeritus, who is the only one God realized being who will come every 700 to 1400 years to redeem mankind. So that is the technical explanation of the Avatar. Whereas all the other souls who are God realized and they drop their body, they are never going to come back. But what Baba is showing us by his action is, we know the Avatar becomes. The Sadguru and the other Shivatmas, they act after they become God realized and when they are in embodied form. So what Baba is showing is basically that all of us are one. You and I are not we, but one. I am God conscious, you're in the process. So this whole process of God realization is from the Big Bang or the Om point, from unconscious divinity to conscious divinity. So the Paratvar Parabrahma state 1, is like the baby in the womb, who is unconscious, but is getting fed. There's a noise in the background, please. So what we are seeing out here is the Paratvar Parabrahma state. The analogy for me is basically like the baby in the womb for 9 months. It doesn't have to do anything. And then when the baby comes out of the womb, it starts crying, who am I? And then it goes through the whole process of 7 stages. And then it goes through 84 lakh human cycles, which is where you get moksha or nirvana, irrespective of whether you're with a Sadguru or not, because 84 lakh human cycles, you are going to get liberation. So
Hey, Kama, your audio dropped.
coming to the goat story, right? Hello? Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. Now we are able to hear you. Kama, are you done, or are you still saying something? Want to say something?
Okay. In every self, it is just that each soul. Hello, can you hear me?
On and off.
Can you hear
On
me?
and off. On and off.
It's
not
I
continuous.
think the network is bad. So maybe tomorrow I will try to complete this because the network is bad here. Jai Baba.
No problem. Jai Baba. So on that note, I already stopped the reading and put my mark there. So is there anything else that we'd like to add and talk about?
Jai Baba.
Jai Baba, nothing. So I'll stop recording, but we can